Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Ned over My Philippine Dreams and to the E to the D over at MPD, coming at you from Dumaguete City, the city of gentle people, except when they're driving. So, we're going to be talking about the NPA and we're going to be talking about martial law being declared on Negros. But first, what I'm going to do is make myself smaller so you can enjoy the little background infographics going on. I put a lot of time getting those images, so it would contribute to the recording experience as a whole. And let me just preface this by saying this is for educational and informational purposes only, for foreigners living, studying, working, vacationing, doing anything in the Philippines. All right, let's get into it. The last few months have been rather violent here on Negros, with a number of bloody encounters occurring between the New People's Army and the Philippines Armed Forces. A few weeks back, things went from bad to worse with a targeted shooting of a number of politicians up in the central part of the province. The NPA has also been active around Santa Catalina on the western side of the island and Bindoy and Manhuyad to the east, which is only a few hours north of Dumaguete City. This past summer, 14 farmers and activists were killed on March 31st for allegedly resisting arrest in those areas. 5 months earlier in Sagay City, which is up in Negros Occidental, a further 9 farmers who were members of the Philippines National Federation of Sugarcane Workers were also killed. This past year, in fact, has been a fury of violent activity with farmers, politicians, police, and soldiers all being killed in the ongoing fighting. All right, so this activity has caused some concern amongst the expat community. Numerous foreigners have been messaging me the latest body counts as they are being released by the media, outlets, and or Facebook. Facebook is a big thing here for getting your news. They are concerned about the escalating violence, but being men of manly means, they haven't yet fessed up to being scared. Fear isn't a bad thing, actually, and it provides an excellent impetus for continued survival. Part of that whole Darwinian evolution thing, I think. Some foreigners are leaving, and some are talking of the same. A few, mostly Americans, have mentioned not being able to have firearms in the Philippines and are feeling a bit defenseless. There has also been much talk of martial law being declared on Negros, but President Duterte just recently and strongly denied that he would not be doing so. After having looked into things a bit, I can personally state that I am not overly concerned about the current state of affairs. I will, however, think twice before journeying out into the interior of Negros, where conflicts between the NPA and government forces seem to be ongoing. Just last year, for example, a tourist was wounded during a firefight up in Sipalay. So I guess that counts as a travel advisory of sorts. Beyond the dead and the digital prayers being offered up on Facebook to an end of the hostilities, the violence begs the question, why? Why is this happening, and how can it be stopped? Woe to live on Sugar Mountain. Following a bit of research, it seems that much of the problem on Negros Island, aka Sugar Island, because it's one of the biggest producers of sugar in the world, seems to revolve around sugar plantation owners and their workers. Specifically, and to that point, it has to do with farmers squatting on the sugarcane fields during the post-harvest dead season, which they call tiempo muerte. They took that from the Spanish. And planting crops while they're squatting, and the plantation owners' resulting rage at them for doing so. As for the shootings, they seem to be coming from armed security forces that target the squatting farmers, and the New People's Army, who seem to target politicians, police, and soldiers by way of retaliation. The problems on Negros between the plantation owners and workers have been going on for decades, with many saying that the unfair labor practices have kept the island locked into a feudal system that is rife for reform. One of the groups pushing for such reform happens to be the New People's Army. All right, let's talk about the New People's Army real quick. The NPA is the military wing of the Communist Party of the Philippines, the CPP. Originally based on Maoist doctrine, it was formed in March of 1969 with the goal of overthrowing the Philippine government. The founder of the NPA, Jose Maria Sison, lives in exile in the Netherlands, along with ally Luis Halandi, who serves as the director of the political wing of the CPP. At last count, the NPA had about 10,000 active militia, down from 25,000 at its height in the 1980s. In the 1980s, there was a crash in the sugarcane market, which caused a lot of violence. The NPA usually operates in mountainous rural areas, but also has a number of urban cells that target and eliminate politicians, judges, police, soldiers, and informants who are against their goals. The group has also long decried the presence of U.S. military forces in the Philippines and has attacked and killed U.S. servicemen. Reports in 1992 and late 2001 indicated that the NPA was specifically targeting U.S. military engaged in joint training exercises. They also took credit for the assassination of U.S. Army Colonel James Nick Rowe in 1989, the creator of the American Military Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape Program, the SEER course. The NPA supports itself by collecting revolutionary taxes from businesses and cooperative politicians. They have long had a holding in the central mountain areas of Negros Oriental and have been supportive of agrarian reform and increasing quality of life for plantation workers. The governments of both the Philippines and the United States consider both the CPP and the NPA to be terrorist groups. All right, let's try to get into the crux of the problem if we can. Negros is rather infamous, again, we mentioned this earlier, for the feudal system being run across many of its massive sugar plantations. Sugar plantations on Negros are huge, absolutely massive. Minimum wage for agricultural workers on Negros is supposed to be 244 pesos. That's about $5 a day. But many workers complain of having to accept 100 pesos a day just to be able to feed their family. 100 pesos is about $2. And that 100 pesos is during the harvest season, which is when they're getting paid the most. Following harvest, during the Tiempo Muerte, wages are even lower. Enforcement of the minimum wage law has long been stymied by predatory contract agreements, a practice that President Duterte has vowed to eradicate across the nation. In desperation, the workers seek to survive through bunkalan, planting cash crops on the plantation owner's land in between seasons. The workers see this as central to their survival, while the wealthy plantation owners see it as property violation. Tensions mount, escalate, and people start dying. Such incidents between laborers and landowners result in incidents such as what happened up in the Sagay massacre. All right, let's talk about the solution, the possible solution. The president of the Philippines is still in the process of land reform, the agrarian reform that I referred to earlier. Thousands of hectares have been given out to poor farmers across the nation, but a good amount have yet to be distributed. At last count, I think nationwide, it was 480 to 620,000 hectares have yet to be distributed. As of 6 months ago, for example, 125,000 hectares had yet to be distributed on Negros. Steps are also being taken to liberalize sugar production, which the government contends will benefit both the workers and the plantation owners. This progress, however, is balanced against the threat of ongoing hostilities, with President Duterte ordering squatting farmers arrested by extreme force if necessary. All right, so I just wanted to basically and briefly address this issue. It's been going on the island for decades. Basically, it's between these wealthy plantation owners and the poor farmers, the agricultural workers. People keep talking about martial law. The president says he's not going to declare martial law. If martial law is declared on Negros, I go to bed early anyways. I try to go to bed around 8 o'clock, and I'm usually asleep by 9 because I like to get up at 4 or 5 in the morning. So it's not going to affect me all that much. The suspension of habeas corpus, on the other hand, that might be a problem. The suspension of habeas corpus, on the other hand, is a little worrying. But again, I don't see it happening. I am not a wealthy plantation owner, and I am not a poor agricultural worker. However, if I was to make any plans about traveling in the interior of the island, up in the mountainous areas where the NPA and these huge sugar plantations are, I would be a little worried. But that's the long and short of it. That's the way I see it. Until next time, this is Ned over at My Philippine Dreams. Keep dreaming, everybody. Puppies and rainbows. Peace. Hey, if you consider our work to be of any value, consider supporting us on Patreon. If you're a Patreon, you get a free copy of my ebook, and we do monthly Google Hangouts. So consider doing that, if you would please.